What's up, guys, and welcome to another episode of Gamescript, looking at the Pittsburgh Steelers versus the New York Jets, and they are the first game with Russell Wilson for the Pittsburgh Steelers starting as the quarterback, and first game of Davante Adams joining the New York Jets. How should that affect how we build our DraftKings Showdown lineups? I'll get into it right after this. What's up, guys? Simon Edwards at Pumacom here with Heat Seeker Sports, and you're watching Gamescript. Today, I'm going to be breaking down the Sunday night game between the Pittsburgh Steelers and the New York Jets. They're playing in Pittsburgh. It's a 39.5-point total with Pittsburgh as 2.5-point dogs at home. And this is going to be an interesting game because we're seeing Russell Wilson taking over the starting role of quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And we're also seeing Davante Adams joining his old teammate Aaron Rodgers in the Jets. So a lot of interesting dynamics going on in this game. Before I start digging into it, make sure to hit the like button. Looking for 30 likes to put out a shorter video later on with more complete thoughts and picks in this game. And make sure to subscribe to the channel. I'm looking to get to 1,100 subscribers by the end of the week. So basically by the end of tomorrow, I'm about 50 short of that. So if you guys can help me out there, that'd be greatly appreciated. And you're going to want to subscribe anyways, because you want to sign up for alerts for when those short videos come out. I usually post them around an hour before lock. So if you sign up for alerts, you can get the notification when that gets posted instead of having to wait around for it. All right, guys, so let's dig into this matchup here. Interesting game. It's two stale offenses facing off against each other. We had the head coach of the Jets fired just a couple weeks ago. Last week, they did not get the head coach bump, new head coach bump, and they ended up losing last week's game in a pretty close game, though. And then this week, they face off against Pittsburgh in Pittsburgh. The Jets have been making moves trying to keep their season alive by firing the coach, and now they're bringing in Davante Adams in a trade with the Raiders. So Davante Adams will play tonight. He was traded earlier in the week. He joined the team earlier in the week. But as far as, like his situation joining a new team, it's a little bit less complicated than it normally would be because he's joining Aaron Rodgers, his former teammate, and they've played together for obviously for years, and they're very familiar with each other. Adams is very familiar with the system that Rodgers plays in, and basically Rodgers is calling the offense in this one. Everybody, I think, knows that, and Adams, being very familiar with Rodgers, knows how to play in that type of environment. So Adams, could have a decent performance tonight. He could have a little bit of rust on him. He hasn't played in a few weeks. You can see his last game was in week 3. He was had a hamstring injury for several weeks there, supposedly, but it was a lot of drama going on in the Raiders locker room. But you can see he had that 29-point week against Baltimore earlier in the season, totally capable of putting up a monster week. And now he joins Rodgers. You can bet that they're going to be making it a point for getting Adams involved in this game to make the Jets look good for the trade, but also to justify doing this type of a move and bringing him to the Jets. So Adams, would not be surprised to see him get a decent amount of work tonight. Breece Hall, probably going to be the highest owned captain tonight. I think I saw him projected at around 26% ownership. The new head coach of the Jets a few weeks ago made it a point to say that he's going to be focusing this offense around Breece Hall. And last week, he ended up having 18 rushing attempts, the most of the season, had 113 yards to go along with it, and then 6 targets on top of that. So 25-point week from Breece Hall. got the kind of usage that we needed if you drafted him earlier in best ball, and gave a promising look to his potential for the remainder of the season. But now that they bring in Davante Adams, maybe that complicates things a little bit. But Breece Hall should be the main focal point of the run game. The rookie Braylon Allen had been getting a ton of work prior to last week, and even being a threat to taking away a lot of the work away from Breece Hall. But you saw last week he only had 3 attempts and 2 targets, so not a huge factor in last week's game. And maybe we see more of that tonight with the focus on Breece Hall. Fields was having a decent year, but if you're familiar with Fields, he's a difficult guy to stack with because it's just tough to figure out which weapons to stack him with, as he does a lot of rushing on top of it. So that complicated things for the running back situation. But the Steelers in general just don't have a good run game this season, and Fields was making the most of it. Had some big weeks, but unfortunately, Russell Wilson is now healthy, and he was named the starter by Mike Tomlin in the preseason. And for whatever reason, they have committed to Russell Wilson as the starter, even though Justin Fields was not doing a poor job as the quarterback. And Russell Wilson will get this start against the Jets, his first start of the season, going against a tough defense. He has a couple things going for him. The Jets will be missing Michael Carter again this week, the slot corner. And they'll also we also have DJ Reed as a game time decision tonight. DJ Reed is also hurt. Him being out would benefit Russell Wilson a lot, but Russell Wilson likely to be playing with a ton of rust after not starting as a quarterback in since the end of last year, basically. And he even got benched like late last year. He missed a few games on Denver when they benched him because he wouldn't renegotiate his contract. So rough scene for Russell Wilson, and he has going to have a ton of rust on him tonight. So if we're looking at the some of these other matchups here, Aaron Rodgers, not a great matchup against Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh has been a solid, like a pass defense or defense in general this season, but they also haven't had a whole lot of stiff competition this year. So it remains to be seen if like a decent quarterback could do well against them, and maybe Rodgers puts up a little bit better performance than we're used to seeing against the Steelers this year. Rodgers he's been okay with some of these games that we had him featured in prime time. Put up 19 points for us last week. I think that got him in the optimal. And then he had 21 points against New England. Both those defenses are not horrible defenses. At least New England wasn't horrible at the time. But these two defenses, he put up decent numbers against. So I wouldn't be surprised if Rodgers could find his way into the optimal for tonight's matchup against Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh, just to give you an idea, has been giving up 13 DraftKings points a game to the quarterback position, and they've been pretty good across the board, just like the Jets. I think the weakest position that Pittsburgh has been against is the tight end position. And the problem with the tight end this week is Conklin is hurt. He's got a bad hip. He had a full practice on Friday, but just having that questionable designation on him, not the best. But Conklin is pretty cheap. He remains cheap at $6,600 in the captain, but his flex salary is $4,400. You see that there's been a few spots where it's been easy to use him, where all the signals kind of pointed to Conklin, and he delivered. This is kind of a matchup where tight ends have benefited, like with the Steelers defense, looking at, let's see, about 8 targets a game to tight end position and 6 receptions a game to the tight end position. So that makes Tyler Conklin very interesting. If we think that Conklin is going to be limited in any way, we got Ruckert as a salary relief guy that, maybe we could slip in if we need to get that salary relief and need a guy in this dumpster dive range where he could have a potential for upside. And Ruckert is only 1,600. We saw him get 3 targets last week. He's gotten a few more other games where he's had more than 2 targets. So Ruckert, could be a sneaky, like touchdown or something like that, maybe for tonight's slate. So keep him in mind when you're building your player pool. Garrett Wilson is not in the best matchup, but against this Pittsburgh defense, I don't hate Garrett Wilson tonight, especially, given the situation where people might be scared off on him by Davante Adams joining the team. But, it could be a situation where they make it a point to make Wilson realize that, he's not going to get passed up in this offense. And, maybe he gets a little bit more work than, people would expect. The Adams trade might even be better for the prospects of Garrett Wilson anyways. Maybe Wilson will have less attention on him, and that'll open things up for him. He's been coming alive lately too. You saw 27 DraftKings points, 32 DraftKings points, and he's had a few other good weeks. So good opportunity here for the Jets to show Garrett Wilson that Davante Adams will be beneficial to him. Just one sec, guys. Got my wife texting me. All right, so moving on from Garrett Wilson, we got Najee Harris. Now, the interesting thing with Russell Wilson and the interesting thing in general with the matchup is the Jets have been, susceptible to receiving running backs, but also the Jets, with Russell Wilson. If you look at some of his game logs from last year, he focused on the running backs a lot in the passing game. And they are missing their starting center tonight for Pittsburgh. Russell Wilson is likely to be under siege. He's going to come in rusty. He's going to be under siege from this Jets defense. He's going to be looking to get rid of that ball quick. And, one of these running backs could potentially benefit. Russell Wilson targeted his running backs at a 32% clip last year. I believe that was one of the highest rates in the league. And, just to give you, there was plenty of weeks where running backs on Denver were getting like 9 targets a game. So not individual running backs, but like cumulative running backs were getting about 9 targets a game in some of those heavily targeted games. So I could see about 9 targets tonight being dispersed between these running backs. The question is, who's going to get them? Because we got Jaylen Warren who's back, and Jaylen Warren is supposedly the more dynamic back. Look at these targets that we've seen for Najee Harris. He's had 2 games where he had 5 targets and 6 targets. If we look to Jaylen Warren, who would give us some salary relief, he's super cheap tonight and probably a really good deal on this slate. He's had a couple weeks where he had over 2 targets. Last week he came back. He got 3 targets against Vegas. He is not on the injury report this week, which is the first time this season that has happened. So Jaylen Warren could be our sneaky guy for Russell Wilson to target throughout the night. He might be the only Steeler worth even playing tonight with Russell Wilson at the quarterback position. Najee Harris, the weak spot of the Jets has been the run defense. We've seen that repeatedly. We saw the rookie Ray Davis from Buffalo just destroy them last week. And, it's completely within the realm of possibility that Najee Harris could have a good game against them. He has not been good this year. He does better when the matchup is soft. And I wouldn't call the Jets a soft run defense. They have only been giving up 19 DraftKings points a game to the position. So I do think that one of these running backs is going to be worth playing. I don't know if it's going to be Najee Harris, though, but I think that Russell Wilson is going to be targeting these running backs pretty heavily tonight. So Najee Harris is definitely in play, even though, he hasn't been doing that great this year. It's going to be a different dynamic with these running backs too. They don't have Justin Fields taking those runs from them anymore, those opportunities. But at the same time, keep in mind the offensive line of the Steelers is a shit show right now. So if we are looking further, we got George Pickens. Pickens is a guy that should theoretically benefit from the style of defense that the Jets run. They run a lot of man coverage, but Pickens has been kind of a mess this year. He was giving up on his routes a couple weeks ago. I liked him a lot as a captain against Dallas, and he was just not performing. He ended up only getting 5.6. It's a little bit difficult to go back to him after that. Like after, a guy was giving up, benched for half of the, he only played a 60% snap rate or something that week. It was just ridiculous. The guy wasn't playing and he was giving up, and it was just just tough to go back to him, tough to trust him again. But if you think that, you want to build an alternative dimension kind of lineup where maybe Pittsburgh comes out slinging and Russell Wilson, it looks like the old Russell Wilson, which is, not too likely, but, if you want to build that way, you'll be building a very low owned type of build. George Pickens would make sense in that situation. Just keep in mind, he'll likely, he's having to face those outside cornerbacks. If Reed is out, I think I like Pickens more. I don't think that Sauce and Reed shadow guys. I think that they stick to their sides. So, Pickens, wherever they decide to move him around, they could move him to an advantageous matchup if Reed is out. And the only problem there is you're relying on Russell Wilson to get him the ball. Russell Wilson, if you remember, he's the type of quarterback. Russell Wilson will take a lot of sacks. He doesn't like throwing. I think he doesn't like throwing interceptions, or there was something with Russell Wilson. He's more willing to take sacks so it doesn't affect his throwing, or there's something weird with Russell Wilson. And the Jets defense is going to look good tonight, but George Pickens, like Russell Wilson, will either throw it deep or he doesn't really have any intermediate throws. So he likes to throw it deep and go for the home run ball. He doesn't like to throw it intermediate, or he'll check it down to these running backs. But he's just gotten really sloppy as he's gotten older. And depending on if you want to take that shot that maybe he throws it deep to George Pickens, and Pickens maybe has a decent matchup without Reed in the game. Maybe they've matched him up against the weaker cornerback. Then I could see Pickens having a decent game, or delivering on one of those monster touchdowns that we expected from him coming into the season. But Pickens is going to be kind of a risky play, and you're putting a lot of trust that maybe Russell Wilson will unlock him a little bit here. Lazard should be probably impacted the most by Davante Adams. Lazard has been kind of playing with the house's money for a few weeks now. Last week, caught that freaking Hail Mary pass. I didn't have any exposure to him last week. He caught that 50-yard Hail Mary, which gave him, probably just on that one play alone, that had to have been about, 12, 13 points. So, he's just been, he's been out overperforming. But I think now with Adams on the team, we can probably see a lot less Lazard monster games like that. Freiermuth, the Jets defense has been pretty good against tight ends. They're only allowing 7.9 DraftKings points a game to the tight end position. They don't allow a lot of targets or receptions to tight end. I would probably stay away from Freiermuth, even though the slot corner is going to be out for the Jets. And Russell Wilson will likely be, like kind of dumping it off to those short target guys. I don't know how much work Freiermuth will get against this Jets defense, but like if the injuries affect the way that the Jets cover the tight end position, that could be beneficial for Freiermuth. So that keeps him in play for sure. Moving on to the next guy, we got Boswell and Zierlein. I don't know how well the Steelers are going to move the ball. I tend to want to only play one Steeler tonight, but Boswell, if you wanted to play, like a guy that you think is going to move the ball and then add Boswell onto it, like I wouldn't hate that, but I tend to think that the Steelers are going to get killed, or like if not killed, then at least they're going to they're not going to be able to put up many fantasy points tonight. So Chris Boswell, I probably lean away from him and more towards Zierlein in tonight's matchup. Zierlein, last week, if you watched the show, I liked Bass a lot. Bass missed a couple field goals, ended up being a really windy game. But, despite the wind, Zierlein ended up in the winning lineup after all. So we got a kicker in the winning lineup after all. I was personally on the wrong kicker, but I think in this game tonight, these kickers are going to be in play, especially Greg Zierlein. I would lean that way more than Boswell because, like I said, I don't know how much the Steelers are even going to be able to move the ball tonight. Steelers D, I like the Steelers D better than the Steelers kicker because I think that, like Rodgers, he's been getting sacked a lot, and I would look for the Steelers defense to step up tonight in this matchup at home against the Jets. Tyler Conklin, and covered him. I like him as a potential cheap guy for us tonight. I like the Jets defense tonight a lot. I think that Russell Wilson is going to struggle. It's going to be, it might be an epic struggle for him. And, I got to check and see. Let me check and see what kind of sacks Russell Wilson was taking last year. Let's see. All right, so let's switch over to Pro Football Reference. Let's go into our game logs here. Go against all teams. Looking at the last couple years, you can see they made him inactive last year, week 17, so he didn't play the last few games. As far as the sacks he was getting, all right, so he got 5 sacks in that game against New England, 2 sacks, 3 sacks, 1 sack, 2 sacks, 4 sacks, 6 sacks. You see all these sacks that Russell Wilson was taking because he didn't want to, get any interceptions on his belt. So he was trying to prevent, throwing risky balls. But you see, he was throwing interceptions regardless. He had 3 interceptions in one game, 2 interceptions, kind of scattered throughout the season. But look at all the sacks this dude was taking. So, just keep that in mind with Russell Wilson and this Jets defense, especially a rusty Russell Wilson. I would not be surprised to see him, be taking a boatload of sacks tonight, or at least a decent amount of sacks. And that Jets defense is going to be looking pretty good, I think. I mean, potential captain option. I know it's kind of cheesy to use the defense in the captain, but this could be one of those nights. Jalen Warren probably, might be one of the best plays on the slate, just with his price and his potential to be, that guy that is the cog for the Steelers. If the Jets are able to take a significant lead in this one, and maybe they play Warren more than Najee in that scenario. I think the games that they've played have been relatively close. They haven't really been blowouts except for, well, this one they won against Vegas. So, and this one they won against the Chargers. They haven't really been down and out in any of these games. So, we haven't really seen a need for Jalen Warren. I'm like so shocked to see like Pittsburgh's won so many games this year. So Braylon Allen, situation I was talking about at the top, I think it's more of a Breece situation in New York right now until we see, maybe a situation where Braylon Allen gets used a little bit more. I'm tend to stay away from him. I don't think at 3,800, I think there's better place that we can go to. Mike Williams is the odd man out with Davante Adams, but, at the same time, I wouldn't be surprised if, they try to stick it to everybody and get Williams, like a target or two in this one. Like last week, he had the play that caused them to, throw the Rodgers to throw that game-losing interception. It was a bad throw on Rodgers' part, but at the same time, like Williams, there was a miscommunication there, and Williams was involved, and it's likely that his days in the Jets, he's probably going to get traded at some point now that they brought in Adams. Patterson is out. That's another beneficial thing for Warren. Calvin Austin. Now, the slot receivers, Calvin Austin's the slot receiver technically for the Steelers, which is going to make him interesting. He got 5 targets last week. If Russell Wilson's looking to get the ball out quick, and like the situation with Michael Carter being out, he's the slot corner. Let's look at Austin's snap counts. Calvin Austin, 36% snap count last week. Prior to that, he had 76%, 56%, 54%, and then a couple 45%. 36% last week. I would imagine that's because they were blowing out the Raiders in that one, so they didn't need him as much. So they were probably using, like less sets that needed him in there. But Calvin Austin is interesting tonight, given the situation with the slot corner on the Jets. So Calvin Austin, 2,400, could be a salary relief guy. Van Jefferson, I saw him getting several targets a few weeks ago against Dallas in that primetime game. He ended up getting 5 targets in that. It felt like they were targeting him a lot. And then last week he didn't get any targets, but he hasn't done anything with his output. But maybe he's the type of guy that Russell Wilson might gravitate towards. We don't know until we see Wilson play with his offense. Ruckert is the cheap tight end on the Jets, who's been getting some work. And other than that, I don't think I like going too far into this dumpster dive here. So let's start building this lineup. Make sure to hit the like button. Give me to 30 likes so I can put out a shorter video a little bit later on. Make sure to hit subscribe on the channel. I am looking for 1,100 subscribers by the end of Monday. So we got a day to get about 50 subscribers. I think the best option for captain, the way that I see the game playing out, and I think it's going to be a popular direction, is a heavy, like the Jets win script. But I think you can get a little bit different if you're putting in 5 Jets, like I plan on doing. I see projected ownership of 5 Jets, one Steeler as 8% owned. So let's do that to start things off. That way we can get Breece Hall, a chalky captain in there. I think from there, I want to go with Wilson because I do think that like Wilson is still going to be the primary target for the foreseeable future. Let's get Rodgers in there for the raw point upside. I mentioned I like the Jets defense. I'm going to get them in there, and I'm going to put Warren in this lineup at 4K. It's going to leave us with 7,400 left. That gives us options like Lazard, if you want to go there, Freiermuth, and then we got the kickers range. So I wouldn't mind putting Zerline in this, even though I have the Jets defense in there, just because this would account. If you put Zerline in there, we account for, like a cheap, cheap Warren in there. The only Pittsburgh guy we have is Warren in there. It'd be a 5-1 build. We'd have Breece Hall captain. That would probably be like lesser owned because we're going to leave a bunch of salary on the table if we put in Zerline as well. So there are some advantages to leaving a bunch of money on the table tonight that could help us out with our builds. If we wanted to go with swap those guys out, let's go with Wilson and the captain and put in Breece Hall after that. If you wanted to try to get Davante Adams in this build too, 2K, guys in the 2K range, I don't mind putting Van Jefferson in there as my only Steeler. Guys, I mean, he's probably the only one that I go in that direction. I think Calvin Austin, Jalen Warren, maybe Pat Freiermuth, and Najee Harris are the main Steelers that I would be interested in playing, and I don't want to play two Steelers if I can avoid it. Let's put Najee in here and see where that gets us. If we put Najee instead of Warren, that would leave us, like putting in like Austin or Jefferson. Like I said, like Austin, like I don't hate putting in Austin in this build, even though it'd be like two Steelers. But at the same time, like I think that Austin is going to be, like well enough low owned so that we don't necessarily have to worry. I get an idea of what Austin's ownership is. Looking at about total ownership under 20% for Calvin Austin. Now, being the slot receiver, he does have that matchup, like I said, but we don't know. He hasn't been targeted at all, but he's been with Justin Fields. So we don't know if Russell Wilson's going to unlock some of these guys and which guys he's going to unlock. Like I said, he likes to throw those home run balls or he likes to check it down. So it's going to be, like throwing the bombs to Pickens, or he's going to be, taking sacks or checking it down to the running backs. So that's pretty much, I think, what we can expect from Russell Wilson, especially with him being rusty. I expect him to take a lot of sacks tonight, and he's probably going to do he might not even make it through the game. Let's do a situation where Jets defense is just dominant. They're just dominating Wilson. Let's get Hall in there. Let's get Wilson in there again. Let's get Rodgers in there. Let's put Warren in this lineup. Let's just see where it leaves us. If you did that direction, you could get like Adams in there and basically get all the studs in this lineup, left with 500 on the table. Probably popular, not popular as in, I mean, as far as dupes, you're going to get a lot of dupes if you do a build like this, because these situations where you're putting in the defense, as the captain, everybody pretty much builds their lineups the same way. So you're likely to get a dupe in that. If you wanted to be different in a build like this, maybe you put in Pickens and leave a couple grand on the table, or like Freiermuth or something like that. Keep in mind, with two defenses that are pretty good facing off against each other. This is a situation where, you could get these scrubby guys outperforming. Like any one of these dudes could outperform Adams. And even though we have the salary for Adams, if let's say one of these kickers outperforms Adams, let's say Zerline, ends up getting, like 9 points and Adams gets 8 points. Well, if you had Zerline in your lineup, then you've left 5,500 on the table. Most people, I'd say about like 90% of people would have had Adams in that lineup. They wouldn't leave 5,500 on the table. So that gives you an idea of how you can, think a little bit different when you're building these lineups to try to get yourself, ahead of the field as far as dupes go. So let's do one more build. Let's say that Russell Wilson is pretty good. He comes back and he's really good tonight. So let's do that build. I'm going to put Pickens in the captain. I'm going to give Russell Wilson in that lineup. And then I'm going to put Najee Harris because in this one, they're playing with a lead. And Najee Harris is, the one primarily being used in that situation. Let's put Garrett Wilson in this one. And then let's go with the Steelers D. Let's say the Steelers D is doing better than the Jets D. That's going to leave us with 5K. That situation, I don't hate putting Zerline in this situation because I think that, the Jets are going to be able to move the ball with all their weapons, although they may struggle to get it into the end zone. So that situation, maybe Wilson's having a big game. You could swap out Wilson for Breece. That gives us 3,800. This situation, not as big a fan of this direction here. I think stick with Garrett Wilson, assuming that Pittsburgh shuts down Breece Hall. Keep in mind, Pittsburgh only giving up 18.2 DraftKings points a game to the running back position. So that's a direction that you could go if you want to go in a Pittsburgh heavy direction, and that leaves you with 5K. I like this direction better than that prior one. Zerline, perfect guy to put in there. If you think the Jets D is going to do well, despite having like all these Steelers in there, like Jets D makes sense as well. Maybe you want to put in Jalen Warren, even though you have Najee in there. I think that would make sense. If we take Najee out and we put Warren in this build, you can get Adams in there. So, all sorts of different ways you can go with it. I would probably, if I'm having them, Pittsburgh playing with the lead, I would probably only want one receiver from the Jet side, and maybe I put Rodgers in that because maybe he's throwing the ball coming from behind. But I definitely would probably lean Harris and maybe Zerline in a build like this. But that should give you guys some options. Make sure to hit that like button. Give me the 30 likes. Make sure to subscribe to the channel so you get the alert when the short videos come out. I'll be putting out content for 3 slates, I believe, tomorrow. We got 2 Monday games coming up tomorrow, so I'm going to try to cover all those slates. So make sure to check those out. Subscribe to the channel and set your alerts so you know when those come out. And thanks for watching, guys.